was by far the happiest work year I've ever spent, by far.
I've never had sort of so many doors open and met so many people that I stayed in touch with as I did here. There was something quite magical about the year here.
For me, the day the phone call came from the University of Alberta was a big moment because it was a validating moment. It meant somebody out there thinks I'm a writer. They want me to be a writer in residence.
Writers often have the feeling that they're frauds, and they have very few sources of validation. They do their best work stuck alone in a dark room somewhere, and they never really get a sense that they're doing their work well. So it's a perfect kind of job because it legitimizes what you're doing and says you're a professional, and you can have an office here among other professionals, and writing is as important an activity as teaching.
It validates literature, the literature of a community, of a country, and says to people who want to write at whatever level that these are really, really valuable practices.
Most of the people who came in for mentoring were from the wider community as opposed to students. And a lot of them were older people who were not necessarily from Edmonton. You know, quite a number were from outside. A lot of them were people who were writing memoir or wanting to go back to that space of family. A lot of them were people I'd never encountered before. They were either from Eastern Europe or from Ukraine or Russia, so it was a different demographic in terms of the people I'm accustomed to in Ontario. And I was absolutely fascinated by the stories they were writing about their ancestry, but also about the settlement of this space, you know, of the prairies.
There were people who came from as far away as Vegreville and you know, other places not in the city itself, and their eagerness to have their work read, to have their practice, this writing thing validated, was very moving. A woman brought her son, who was he was maybe about 12 years old, and his work was that of a young boy, but that wasn't the point. The point was that he or his mother was so invested in this writing that he was doing, that he wanted he knew that there was a writer in residence. He knew that he could bring his work. He knew that his work could be critiqued, that he could get feedback, and he came for this, and I thought that was terrific.
Yeah, the best storytellers I've ever met have been people that you work with in manual jobs, because they have some stories that they've told over and over again, and as they tell them, they're doing what we try to train students to do. They've edited them. All the extraneous stuff has fallen away, and by watching, every time they tell a story, they watch the person they're talking to. They see where their eyes glaze over, and so they drop that part. And by the time they're telling you the stories are wonderful. They're perfectly fashioned, and so people have stories.
The bringing of community people into the English department to show that it is not a ivory tower place, but that practical things, wonderful things are being talked about. You know, books and poetry that explore human lives, that you can write like Aretha Van Herk discovered when she read Robert Croce's The Stud Horse Man. You know, she looked out the window, and there she saw the high-level bridge across which Demeter brings his herd of wild horses, right? You can write brilliant prose about this place where you live. And that is one of the delightful things that happen when people from the community, people not associated with the university, come into the English department, and they discover that these things are also being read and talked about here. So that kind of contact is marvelous for people who have these writer longings but have no way in which to really bring them out.
I think it's also important to give the writers, Canadian writers, an exposure to other parts of Canada, and to understand the writing of what I call the Canadian epic, because every region in Canada is feeding into that epic, feeding in something that's different.
And one of the things they discover and the things that happen is friendships. You hear stories, you discover worlds that you yourself would not normally meet. Say, if you'd never come to Edmonton, for example.
My very first morning in Edmonton, I woke up to this, this noise and confusion, and I looked out and there was this fantastic looking bird on a fence teasing a dog next door. And after that, I just saw magpies everywhere, and I just felt, you know what, they own this city.
I think one of my major pieces was written here, about the killings at Kent State. It was written while I was here as a result of taking a short walk out to the Wee Book Inn and finding a little reference to one of the victims of the Kent State killings. And it's, I guess, when my life's work is weighed out, that might be one of the few poems that survives, and I'm immensely grateful to the university for providing me the chance to do that here.
I got an awful lot of writing done. I practically finished my my novel, He Drowned She in the Sea. Unlike when I was writing Sirius and was sort of in that deep, dark world on my own for a long time, I was forced to surface, to meet with people, discuss writing. And in discussing writing with the people who came to me, I found that I was having to put into words, having to think around really, really carefully, very clearly, even problems that I was having in my own manuscript.
You're making a contribution to the literature of Canada. And if someone like Marian Engel can, as she did, finish one of her novels here, this is a major contribution to Canadian writing.
We come onto this planet, and what do you do with your time? I mean, you work and you play, and you're gone, right? And I think what all the arts try to do in the various medium is express what it was like to be alive during our time here. And it turns out human beings are somewhat interested in that. So one of the things a writer does, I think, is to capture what it's like to be alive now.